Hey folks, and welcome. Natural Defensive Tactics, Episode 7. I'm Joe Calderon, your host today. 7, COVID-19. Hopefully everybody out there is safe and doing the right things. Today's lesson is about the stance, the NDT stance, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to throw a nice little shout out to Linda Hansen, a very good friend of mine and one of my original NDT instructors about 15 years ago. And she's running a fantastic program nationwide. It's called React. I think it's Respond, Evade, Anticipate Corporate Training. So great job, Linda. Hope to talk to you soon. As I usually do a couple of the safety tips. Today's going to be fire safety, which is a little odd, but you know how I think. Fire safety is a big thing, especially for people that travel for a living, and even if you're on vacation, you're in a hotel room, a condo, an Airbnb that you're not familiar with. It's always good to know what your surroundings are. You know, if it's got alarms, if it's got a sprinkler system, things like that. But let me just give you some statistics. I know for a fact if you've got status in a hotel chain, and fortunately or unfortunately I do because I travel a lot, the high floors are where they usually stick those type of customers. And don't get me wrong, I love being on the 35th floor at a hotel down at the Hong Kong Bay, taking a selfie with that cab in my hand at 3 in the morning, right? The lights and everything. Probably not that smart. But having said that, a standard fire truck in this country and internationally in a first world city, those things extend from 75 feet to 105 feet, and that's it. And those roughly equate to maybe the 6th or 7th floor and peaks out at about the 9th or 10th floor. So when they dispatch one of those things during an emergency, do you think you're going to be the only one waving down from that high rise? No. So it's almost like hitting the lottery for one of those ladders to get to you. I think they've got some extenders, they're like super trucks called, I think they're called turntable ladders or something like that extend up to 125 feet. Odds that they're going to get to you are slim, to be honest with you. So maybe think twice about booking that floor above the 7th floor. Now, having said that, when I was doing seminars in the past, I would do everything from safety to security training, a lot of different corporate events. And one of the statistics I would use is a human being, an adult human being that falls out of about 50 feet, and that equates to about the 4th or 5th, 6th floor, depending on the structure, has about a 50% survivability rate on surviving that fall. So it may behoove you to take maybe the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, and maybe just break an ankle and get patched up and go to work the next day or something like that. Just some thoughts. The other thing is, when I do check into my hotel room, besides doing the normal, where's the exits and the elevator and the stairwells and things like that, if there's a situation in a hotel, they're probably going to lose power. So they got an emergency generator system built up, and they're going to have some low visibility lighting to get you out. So always know where the exits are, especially the stairwells. That's what you're going to use. And just as a technique, when I check into my hotel, I take this contact weapon. No, it's a hanger. But I take this contact hanger out of my closet, and I place it on the back side of the doorknob on the inside of the room. And what it signifies to me is the opening tells me what direction to go if there's a fire or there's smoke and I can't see or it's too dark. So it's just a simple trick. So at least I know I'm going in the right direction. Moving on to the lesson today. The stance, the NDT stance. It's pretty simple. It's not very complicated. It's not built to be complicated. It's supposed to be natural, something that you'll revert to automatically because you do it every day. Now, I've used some references from that book, the Book of 5 Rings, and in that book, that great samurai warrior would talk about use your everyday stance as your fighting stance. Use your everyday stance as your defensive tactics stance, your self-defense stance. It makes perfectly good sense. Having said that, a good stance is kind of a balance in motion. It's an athletic stance, able to push off of, pull back off of, change angles off of. It just makes sense to have something that you can revert back to. One of the concepts I also use in this stance is, if you see a wild animal and you're walking or hiking through a trail, some of the advice they give you is make yourself bigger than you are. Bigger than you are. And in the defensive tactics world, we don't really preach that. What we do preach is be comfortable with who you are, the size that you are. It may be enormous, it may be a medium stature, it might be small. But if you shrug and get yourself as small as possible, you're going to reduce power to deploy on that individual. You're also going to give the aggressor the mindset that you're afraid or meek or shows weakness, right? On the other hand, if you make yourself bigger than you are, you may be a little overconfident. You may not be able to back up what you're about to throw, right? The other thing about being bigger than you are, it takes you out of your element. It takes you out of your element. Getting on your tiptoes and being as big as possible. You're not in a position to defend yourself and maybe escape. So those are some of the things I would talk on. The stance is pretty simple. I'm squared up to you right now. If I just take a normal walking step towards you, that is the stance, believe it or not. And you notice that I kind of bladed a hair, right? So I've got my dominant side, my power side back just a hair, which is great. But it's not some fancy dancy, move or nothing. It's just basically a step. Now, built off of that step, we'll go from the head down and kind of describe what I'm doing. First of all, the head, the cranium, hard, right? Soft tissue areas, vital areas, you want to protect those things. So remember in the earlier episodes, I would say you kind of want to pivot down just a hair because you're going to focus in on the target or the person, right? And when you focus down, you're going to go ahead and cover some of those vital areas. And if he takes a shot at you, that's that glancing blow off the forehead, okay? Which is a good thing, believe it or not. As you go down to the shoulders, you want them to be kind of loose. You don't want to be all stiff and ready to rock and roll because you're going to restrict your flexibility and your power when you start shrugging or trying to build up that, that inner strength inside of you. And so you want the shoulders to be nice and loose, okay? We talk about the arm positioning, and we talked earlier in the last episode about the low guard and the high guard. And we talked about maybe, why we do the open hands exposing targets, right? Well, in that low guard position, it stems from an open 90-degree angle. That's based off your forearm and your biceps. That's greater than 90 degrees. And in this position, you're using all your forearms and all your tricep muscles to be as strong as possible, okay? Inside the 90, you're not using as much forearm and you're losing a lot of your triceps, so you become weaker. And you can do, if I had a partner, I would show you a demonstration, but you can do it yourself. If you just go ahead and go outside 90, take your other hand, clasp, and push on it. Now I know it's going to be a little bit odd, but you're going to feel the tension in the whole arm, including the forearms and the wrist. If you go ahead and do inside 90 and do the same drill, the wrist is completely out, right? The forearm is partially out, and most of the triceps out. It's much weaker. So why not start in your strongest position of strength, outside 90 on both arms, okay? And again, that outside 90 in a low guard is a passive position, but guess what? It's as strong as possible here. As I move down the body, you want, obviously, the hips generate power. So there's not much you can do in the low guard position or the high guard position to generate power. That's after you've thrown or deployed something at that point. But as you go down to the knees, you want the knees bent. Please don't lock your knees and pass out. If you lock your knees, it's easier to break your knees. So you're always taught to at least lean forward a hair and bend on both knees. The foot position is a natural position. If you walk like this, then stand like this. If you walk like this, then stand like this. So it should be a natural position, and also that you should be on the balls of your feet. Okay? Your heel should be just off the ground. That gives you a little momentum downhill on the individual, but it also, with your knees bent and your ball and on the balls of your feet, you're able to spring, to generate power, to go backwards, to go sideways, to change angles. You're at the most athletic position that you can be in at that moment. So, knees bent on the balls of your feet. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, having said all of that, you want to be able to deploy your weapons, right? And we talked about the low guard position and the high guard position. Open hand versus closed hand. Now, I go back to that, trying not to convince you that open hand's better. I'm just telling you, you're going to probably generate more power off that. But if all you have, and what comes naturally, is to punch the individual, that's okay. Trust me, that's okay. So, the low guard position, in the outside 90, that's about a foot off of my chin. That's about it. In the high guard position, same thing. You can see the difference? It's the same position. Here, it looks like a passive position, but in reality, I'm ready to strike. I'm ready to take that shot. High guard, same difference. Now, you've noticed, hopefully, that my left hand is a little higher than my right hand in both demonstrations. The only reason they're higher on the left-hand side is, statistically speaking, most Americans, about 90 to 93%, depending on what survey you use, is right-handed. So, if he hasn't bladed to the left side, guess what? If he does, guess what hand comes up a little higher? Does that make sense to everybody? So I start out not knowing what he is. I'm going to take the odds, like playing poker in Vegas, right? I got better odds at 90%. That first strike is a knockout punch, typically from a drunk or somebody that doesn't know how to fight. And that's going to be that big haymaker coming from the right side. I'm going to take that side out of the picture. And that's why that left hand is up just slightly. Okay? So the reaction could be a lot quicker from here and a lot quicker from here. That's the stance, basically. It's not that difficult. We'll expand on that in future episodes. I do want to take a quick moment and just show you the basic strikes of NDT. And these are all kind of slow headshots. They'll change, and it's basically 10 basic moves. That's all it is. What we like to teach is, once the onslaught has happened and you can recover, you want to follow up with a minimum of 3 strikes. So, just to get muscle memory moving, we kind of develop just basic strikes that maybe you have heard about, maybe you have tried in the past another system, or some of you have never even done it, or just naturally done it, an elbow. So the basic NDT strikes is almost like it's 10 strikes, very simple. I use it for muscle memory, and most boxers, trained boxers, will know this sequence: jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Can be closed fist. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Doesn't really matter. Those are the first 4 strikes. Simple. We add in some elbow strikes, and we add in some hammer fists, which that's the target area. Okay. So, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, and then we use just the opposite forward, downward elbow, reverse elbow, and then the hammer strike. After that hammer strike, we throw another elbow, a reverse elbow, and we finish off with a hammer strike. Now, all of those strikes can be used anywhere. That hammer strike that's coming over the top to hit him on the nose possibly can be used to hit him on the temple, can be hit at the floating rib, okay, or the rib area, basically. So all of these elbow strikes can be a downward elbow, it can be a cross elbow, it can be an uppercut elbow, it could actually be a jab elbow. So you can see the different movements and placements of targets. It's not that difficult. We'll start building on this as we go on with the further episodes. Again, I think that's it. I'm Joe Calderon for Natural Defensive Tactics. We'll talk to you later.